This is Ginny Brant with Unleash Your God-Given Healing. Today I'd like to share an interview I did with my good friend Annette Reeder, the biblical nutritionist. This interview is about microplastics, how they're getting into our bodies, what they're doing to our bodies, and ways we can avoid them. You see, these microplastics are getting into our body and we don't even realize that we're being exposed to many of them. So please learn from this wonderful video that Annette and I did for you.
Hello and welcome. I'm Annette Reeder from thebiblicalnutritionist.com, and today we're talking about plastics. We have all used plastics throughout our entire life, but maybe you're not aware of how harmful they actually are. They're even harmful to an unborn fetus, all the way up to a person who's 90 to 100 years old. There's no age limit that's not harmed by plastics in our processing and the different things that we're going to talk about today. So this video is for everyone who's concerned about their health and their longevity, but just to be able to live every day to their fullest. Plastics are affecting you in more ways than you ever thought possible. And that's what we're going to talk about today. All right. So today I have with me one of my great friends and who has been on such a cancer journey that her wisdom is what we all want to glean from. She's an amazing researcher and her credentials would fill up the rest of this hour, but we're not going to go into all of that. So let me just bring on Ginny Brant. Ginny, thanks for joining us today. And we have a very serious topic to talk about. And I don't think everyone realizes the health conquest, the health challenge we have with plastics. So let's dive right in. First of all, welcome, and I'm glad to have you back.
It is great to be back, and I have to tell you that today is my husband and my 49th wedding anniversary.
Oh, well, congratulations. And you're spending it here with me. That's
Oh,
that's
just a
exciting.
short part of it. Just a
Okay.
short part of it. We'll take a bike ride in a little bit, and
Oh, good for
that's
you.
one of our favorite things to do. But yes, let me tell you that I began learning about plastics after I was diagnosed with cancer. I had no idea that plastics could play a role in my being diagnosed with cancer. And, we manufacture 800 tons of plastics a year. So plastics are here to stay. So what we have to figure out is how are they getting into our body through our skin, through the air, through what we eat, through what we drink? What ways are they getting into our bodies so that we can minimize that? We're never going to get rid of all plastics. That's just not a possibility. But how can we prevent those plastics that are affecting our health? And so what I want us to look today is some of the different ways I learned since being diagnosed with cancer that plastics were getting into my body. So let me just dive into the first one. I mean, we all know about plastic water bottles, but I have to admit, when I was diagnosed with cancer, I was drinking from plastic water bottles on an everyday basis and never thought anything about it. Well, we now know that many of those bottles contain BPA, and when we drink, that plastic gets, those microplastics from that bottle get into our system, and the hotter the bottle is because of the sun or being exposed to heat, the more plastics, the more it leaches into our system. But what we might not know is that, like yesterday, we were traveling and we stopped and got some hot coffee in a paper cup, not styrofoam, but look at what goes on top of that paper cup.
Yeah.
A plastic top. And so when the heat rises, it hits that little top and goes back down into the drink. So now when I go to one of these places, I simply don't feel my coffee is full. And then if I have to put the top on because we're going through a lot of motion, then I'll pull it back off. But the point is, we got to be careful about, just simple things like that. Or we can go in and use our Yeti. But the point is, it's coming in through plastic bottles, even plastic lids. Now that's more pronounced when the steam from that coffee is going up and hitting that lid and coming back down. So I had to change that once I was diagnosed with cancer. That's the first plastic I learned about. So that was number one. And then you have to think about this with number one. Styrofoam is the most caustic plastic. And so you don't want to drink from any styrofoam cup. That's a plastic, what we call a number 6. There are categories of plastics, and 3, 6, and 7 are the most dangerous to our health. So we want to avoid styrofoam cups. And where's the first place you're going to get a styrofoam cup? At a church dinner, because
Yeah.
they are the cheapest. So just save your church the money and bring your own cup to get your water or your coffee or whatever in. So anyway, that's important that we avoid that styrofoam. But another one that just blew my mind, and I just wasn't looking for this at all. My coffee pot just died on me, you know. And so I'd had it 10 years. So I'm trying to figure out if it's died or I need to throw it away or what. And I'm looking inside of it and it's all plastic. I had never noticed that before. The water's actually boiling in plastic. Who thought of that idea? So I had to go get a new coffee pot. And what did I find? I went to Bed Bath & Beyond, but that all the coffee pots that I could find were boiling the water in plastic, most of them. And if they weren't boiling the water in plastic, they were brewing it through plastic.
Right.
So what did I do? I found a stainless steel percolator. That's the only way I could not have plastic. And so the brewing of our coffee and our teas, you look at the Keurigs today, you're in a little plastic pod brewing that. And sometimes it's boiling it in the plastic too. So and there's a way you can get the Keurig little stainless steel pods where you put your own coffee in. But you also have to look at, in your Keurig, are you boiling in plastic or are you boiling in steel? You should be boiling in steel. And when you go out to eat, I've never seen a restaurant that didn't have stainless steel brewing mechanism for coffee, and they pour it in the glass pot to your china cup. So it's not usually a problem in a restaurant, but it's usually a problem in our home. And so that was a wake-up call for me. And then I was in British Columbia in a restaurant and I ordered hot tea. And it was a very healthy tea, you know? And so I'm dipping my bag in and out. And what do I find? But it's a plastic tea bag. I didn't know
Exactly.
they made such things. So I began to wonder how many microplastics are getting into my body from this tea bag. Well, a scientist, an engineer named Natalie Tavinsky, she's a chemical engineer and a researcher. She did the research on it because she was in that tea shop doing the same thing, noticing that it was a plastic tea bag. And this is what she found. She found that a single plastic tea bag brewing at a temperature of 95 degrees Celsius released approximately 11.6 billion microplastics and 3.1 billion nanoplastics into a single cup of the beverage. So
Wow.
these are just, again, these unexpected ways that we're getting plastics. If you drink tea several times a day and you're drinking with a bag that's plastic, you know, this is what we're getting. So the brewing of coffee and tea really woke me up. And now I do things, of course, differently. Another way is food storage. I mean, we just store our stuff. I looked in my refrigerator, my freezer, everything was stored in plastic. And so now what I do is I have glass containers with the silicone tops, and I don't fill the glass containers when it's food I'm freezing all the way up to the top where it touches. But the point is, this is something I did on an everyday basis. And now when you open up my refrigerator and my freezer, you will see all of these Pyrex and glass containers with silicone tops that are labeled, so I know what's what. But I've had to do a complete, turnover there and use different things. I'm not concerned about plastics that, don't touch my body and don't interfere with my food. Like I store things in the attic in hard plastic. I'm not
Sure.
concerned about that. I'm concerned about things that are going to get into my food and my water supply and, that are around my body where I can ingest them in some way. And a lot of the ingesting is done through breathing. It's done through what we drink and what we eat. And of course, as we'll see, what we put on our skin. So I had to change out the food packaging and storage. And then I never thought about the tap water. I had already filtered my water for other reasons, just to reduce other chemicals because there was a high chemical load found in my body. But I never thought about microplastics being in my tap water until there was an article in the newspaper about Charleston, South Carolina. And then Columbia, South Carolina, where I grew up, was on the news on ABC News because microplastics were found in the tap water. So I researched further, and what did I find? It's not just Flint, Michigan having a problem with their tap water. 94% of our municipalities that produce this tap water, 94% show microplastics of some sort in the tap water.
Now, where is this coming from in the tap water?
Well, it's coming from the fact that our water comes from our soil. And we've got microplastics now in the air. We've got that in the soil. Okay. And so anything in the soil gets into our tap water, and anything from the streams and rivers, all this gets into our tap water. And evidently the water companies cannot filter out something that small because a microplastic is usually less than 5 millimeters. Basically, they are so small that they can't filter that out for everybody, you know. So it's coming in. I never thought about it. So 94%. So just figure that your tap water probably has some microplastics in it. It might be worse in some areas and lesser in some areas. But again, we don't want to be drinking microplastics because microplastics are so small you can't see them, but you can see them on a microscope. And when you look at these research studies, they're now seeing them on a microscope in our lungs, in our heart, in every part of our bodies. So this is something to think about. So now we got to think about tap water, but you can filter it, but you got to get a really good filter to be able to do that. Baby bottles.
Oh,
I'll tell you what, nursing never looked so good. You don't have to warm it. You don't have to worry about BPA. You don't have to worry about plastics. It's convenient. It's perfect for the baby. But some people cannot nurse because they adopt, and some people can't for other reasons. So what you've got to do is all these plastic bottles, they have a number on the bottom of them, and you would want them to be 2 and a 4. There's that triangle with a number in it. And if it's not a 2 or a 4, if it's a 7 and it says it's BPA free, that helps, but we're not really sure what that means. If it's not BPA in it, it might be something else just as bad. Who knows? So these baby bottles, you don't want to be heating in the microwave this breast milk or formula in the baby bottle, in the microwave, in the baby plastic bottle, because we know that makes it leach more. But the 2 and the 4 resin coat are better. And the 7, if it says BPA free, we think that's a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, that's a problem. Of course, when my babies were born, when they got a snack, when I couldn't get to them because I had twins at one point, it was always a glass bottle. Okay. But as they got older, you know, they could break because they would mess with them and throw them and whatever. So, you know, it's really better if you can just nurse and use glass bottles carefully because of all the, you know, situation. And then you've got children's toys and sippy cups. You've got to look carefully at what those things are made of, because as you said in the beginning, these microplastics can affect everything from a baby up to someone in their 90s. You know, none of us needs these plastics. So that's number 5. I mean, that's another place you have to look, especially if you have young children involved. And then, now this one really got me. I'd done all this research on plastic. So I'm sitting there cutting and chopping one day, cooking, and I looked down and it never occurred to me, I am chopping on a plastic cutting board. What impact might this have on my food? Oh, me, never thought about it. Here I'm doing all this research on plastic. So I began to research, and what did I find? Yes, there was a study done in North Dakota, University of North Dakota, and they found that cutting carrots, this is just an example, on a plastic board can generate as much as 15 milligrams of microplastics per cut. And then they
Wow.
estimated this could accumulate to 50 grams per year, depending on the hardness of the vegetable and how much that individual person cuts and how sharp the knife is. But the point is, that is significant. That's like, over a credit card of plastics in your body that your body now has to try to filter out. Okay. So, yeah, that. And then there was another peer-reviewed study in Environmental Science and Technology where they tested chopping vegetables on both polyethylene and polypropylene plastic boards. And they found that, yes, it releases microplastics into our food. So these two studies caused me to take my convenient plastic chopping board and just literally, I didn't want to give it to anybody. I ditched it and threw it in the trash and got a hard wood in place of it. And now there's steel ones with titanium or steel that are easy to work with too. So, you just got to look for a better option, you know. So I keep thinking, I keep learning and then I keep turning around the corner and what do I find? Something else. It's always something else I didn't think about. It's not the things that you would think, it's the things that you don't think about. And the last one that really got me was, and this is just something I've researched in the last few years, and that is clothing. A lot of fabrics are made with plastics, polyester, synthetic fibers. These things fleck off and they get into our laundry, and it's just, it's on our body all the time. And so I've had to look at, okay, I'm not going to throw all my clothes away. Clothes are an investment. But when I buy new clothes, I try not to buy polyester. I try to buy the natural fibers, and the clothes I do have that I wear during the day, as soon as I get home, I will take those clothes off and put on something that's all organic, natural fibers while I'm at home. And what am I going to sleep in? I'm going to sleep in natural fibers.
Right.
Because that's when your body detoxes, regenerates, and repairs. And I don't want to be doing it with all these toxic chemicals around me in my clothes, which is right on my body. So I get into my sheets that are organic cotton, and I put on my organic cotton nightie. And that way, I've reduced, half of my plastics just from committing to being in the natural fibers at least half the day. It's everywhere you look, and it's not going to change. So we have to change what we buy and what we get around our bodies, what we drink, what we eat. And, that's the only way we can lower these microplastics that are getting into the water supply. They're everywhere. It's just, we have to be wiser and smarter.
Exactly. And yet God created our body to detox 24/7. And so, but that's not going to happen when we're eating lab experiment foods. So if we're eating processed foods, I don't know if you thought into looking at how many plastics actually are coming through the processed food. That would be another interesting study. But even thinking about that, a lot of the frozen foods in the refrigerator section or the freezer section at the grocery store are stored in plastic as well.
Oh,
So, and
absolutely. Yeah.
then they bring it home and they heat it up in the microwave. This is
Oh,
not
yes. And that is the worst thing you can do.
exactly. So we can't go into all of the harms of the microwave. That'll be another video. But I want to leave people with some tips to not get overwhelmed by this. Yes, it gets in your body and then it gets stored into tissue, and the breast tissue really accumulate toxins very easily. Fat also accumulates toxins, is where it's stored. And so that makes it difficult to lose weight. And you're like, how come I'm not able to lose weight? Well, there's a lot of interferences. It's still possible. It's not impossible to lose weight. We just have to be more attentive and more intentional. So number one, realize God created our body to detox, but we have to give it what God directed us to eat in order to create that detox effect. And so when we eat high fiber foods, when we have a good balance of pre and probiotics, then our body has the energy it needs and the materials it needs to create that detox effect. And so one is avoid as much as possible. And as you've pointed out, it's in every area of our life. every single area of our life. And so, what is one step that you can take just this week with what everything that Jenny has shared? What's one thing you can walk away with? Is it using more of your stainless steel water bottle? Or is it and not using the plastic water bottles? Even when we travel through the airports, I always bring my stainless steel water bottle because I can fill it up at the water fountain. Now, is that going to have nanoplastics in it? Possibly, but I've lessened what I'm going to be affected by. So I am lessening the effect by choosing to always use my own water bottle. Then I'm not buying water out of a plastic bottle. If I'm on the plane, they're always going to serve you water out of a plastic bottle. I just say, no, I already have my own water. So I go through the airport, my bottle's empty, and then I fill it up once I get past the TSA. Styrofoam, yeah, that's been outlawed in my home since 2000. It's like, yeah. And your skin, all of this are so just as we are created to sweat, sweating also helps us to detox. So find one step that you can do to eliminate the amount of plastics that you're getting exposed to. Number two, find ways to sweat. You need to sweat 2 or 3 times a week, whether it's with an infrared sauna or you just go outside. I don't know where you live, but the sun still comes up every day. Maybe it doesn't break through the clouds, but it's still out there. We need to get exposed to the sun. That's part of healing. Watch your tea and your coffee. And my tea kettle is stainless steel, so I've always used a stainless steel tea kettle. And food storage. A lot of people are getting into meal prepping, so they're putting these meals in plastic bags and then either layering them like this or they're layering them like this. Then they're popping them in the microwave, and it's like, no, we're still exposing a lot of plastics. And so the baby bottles, so true, so true on all of that. Also, the women who are nursing are storing the extra breast milk in these little plastic little bags, putting it in the freezer because there are days that you need extra and you're not producing as much. So I get it. We just need to look at those bags, see what is the number on those bags, and is there another alternative? Can it be stored in a mason jar instead? Maybe just buy little mason jars, even like the little, I think it's like 2-ounce mason jars, like you use for making jelly or something like that. There are other ways if we just get
There are.
smart about it. I use mason jars for everything. I have mason jars in the freezer. I have mason jars in the refrigerator. Leftovers go in mason jars. It's just simple, easy, and they're so just simple to use. But if you buy spaghetti sauce, save the jar, save the lid. And a lot of jars that you buy in the grocery store can fit with like your peanut butter. It's plastic. Okay, that's something that just hit me as I said that. But the cap fits on your mason jar. It's a plastic cap, but still, if you're not touching the food to the cap. So invest in mason jars. They're so easy to use for so many different things. So I just want to encourage everyone. It may seem overwhelming, and yes, plastics are very harmful to us, but they're part of our life. The more you can lessen the effect on you, the better you're going to be. And the more you recognize God created your body to detox, let's just give it what it needs to do it to the best effect. And then always be looking for ways to avoid the plastics. Is that a good summary, Jenny?
I think so. I would add to that, keep moving,
Yeah.
because that, stimulates your lymphatic system to take out
Mhm.
the trash as your body's trying to detox. So movement is also important to getting toxins out of your system. So yeah,
Yes. All right.
drink
So,
that water, clean water, and move and sweat and reduce your plastic
exposure.
exposure.
All right, perfect. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And thank you for letting us share with you God's recipe for excellent health. And yes, that includes food, it includes nutrition, it includes your health. And I talk about all the plastics and the numbers in the nutrition manual, the Treasures of Health nutrition manual. So you can check that out there. If you just want some more, you need it written down, then go ahead and check that book out. Thank you again for letting us share with you. And if you just want to stay connected with the Biblical Nutritionist family, then hit the like, subscribe, and the bell so you get notified every time we post new videos. We are here to help you live your healthiest life now and to see God's mission in your life fulfilled with so much ease that you're going to say, wow, I've never felt so good before.